let's get to the business at hand. Spygate, the story that will never die. Jerome Bettis was on Ben's podcast, Footballin', and the topic came up. And then as background, what you say is true, that the NFL, let's see, fined Bill Belichick $500,000 for use of equipment to videotape an opposing team's offensive or defensive signals. That was the league statement from September 13th, all those years ago. And it was the largest fine ever imposed on a coach, $500,000. They were also stripped of a first-round pick. So the league, declared them guilty. So you're right about that. They were guilty. The question is, were they guilty specifically against the Steelers? And if so, how? Was it stealing offensive or defensive signals or both? Here's Jerome and Ben.
It was 4th and 1. They called timeout. First of all, coach did this back in the day. This meant counter. They saw this. Coach called it. Offensive line coach did that on the sideline. They called timeout. Who normally goes to the sideline on a timeout? The defensive captains, right? They told the nose guard, Washington, they pulled him to the sideline. Big 400-pound guy, he don't want to go to the sideline and come all the way back.
Cold.
Right?
It was cold.
What he want to go to the sideline for? They yelling, made him go to the sideline, and I always thought, where he going to? He went all to the sideline, came back. Then we run the play. He loops into the hole. Washington does. They stop us on 4th down, right? That's a critical play in the game. They had our signs, and they called a timeout to get them ready for that play because they knew it was coming. No question in my mind. I remember vividly because I thought, why is this big dude going to the sideline?
So we'd always heard it was them stealing your defensive signals. What do you make of what Jerome said? Was that ever a talk amongst you guys, Chris?
And it's great to hear Jerome's voice, man. I miss Bussy, and I miss being on the field with him. I never heard Jerome talk about it. I did hear Hines talk about it, right? Hines Ward's talked about this. I think he talked about it right after the game in the locker room to some degree. And so this is the first time I've heard those two guys talk about it. But the reality is this, is that it happened. And I've said this before with you guys. I mean, I started in that game. I played that game. When we played them on Halloween night in Heinz Field, they have balls. They ran the ball 6 times for 5 yards. They struggled to move the ball. We beat them 34-20. I don't think the game was that close, really, in the reality of it. And then we come back in the next game, and they run the ball for over 126 yards. The 3-4 defense that we employed, we were the best defense in the land. We were the number 1 overall defense in the NFL that year. We were number 1 against the run. We were 3rd or 4th against the pass that year. We were the best defense in the land. And we come out, and the Achilles heel of the 3-4 defense, was the zone stretch, was the outside stretch play. We're two-gapping a lot of the times. I noticed, and I felt it because I started in that game, played the whole game. When we were in our 3-4 base defense, every single time it seemed like they ran that zone stretch play. And then when we would come out and we were running our blitzes, Tom Brady would run his quick passes, his screen plays to offset that, to get us to catch us in our blitz. And so it felt to me, and I've said this before, and you can go back and listen to my radio clips on this, is that I felt like they knew because it seemed like they were calling the perfect plays for our defense. And when you couple that and these comments with the actual fact that the NFL found evidence, and we also know there's a lot of things that were hidden because it was a much bigger scandal than I think that if all of it would have gone out. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
Well, we got to hear the other side, Joe.
Let me ask a question.
The retorts
well,
too.
Of course they're going to come out.
No, we want you to. They have come out and said it, and we want you to hear it. But go ahead, Joe.
Of course you are. Of course.
Well, Ron brought this up the other day. A lot of people have over the years. If you suspected the Patriots of doing things like that, why not change your defensive signals between the game that you played in the regular season and the one in the playoffs?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much we knew at the time, and maybe we learned more after the AFC Championship game. So I don't know how much we knew. I wasn't part of that. Right? I was just a little, first-year starting guy. I wasn't involved in those conversations. But I do know what I just stated. Of course you're going to come out and say those things. And I do not believe, Cookie, for 1 second, that everyone on that team knew what was going on behind the scenes. Where Bill Belichick was putting film side by side and watching the signal and the play, the signal and the play, knowing what coincided with what play. I don't think everybody knew that. I think that it was on the down low, and so I don't think that Asante Samuel knew that there was cheating going on. But the reality is, it's a fact. The NFL put it out, and it happened.
Why, Hokie, and I probably asked you this before, Bill Cowher said it had nothing to do with the outcome of the game. They outplayed us. Why did he say that?
Because Coach Tomlin would say the same thing. Think about some of the comments Coach Tomlin's made at the podium. They're never going to come out and say and make excuses. Then you look like a loser, right? And coaches are never going to do that. And Mr. Rooney never said anything about it, right? And so I just think at the end of the day, it's like you're whining if you start saying, hey, they cheated. And so that didn't really – but the reality is that there's proof in the pudding and that they did. And I think now if you sat Coach Dower down, and I think if everybody was took some truth serum, I think it would come out that everybody felt that way.
Well, here's the thing. Neither Cowher nor Dan Rooney nor Asante Samuel right there ever said they didn't cheat. They all said maybe they were a better team. They outplayed us, whatever. But none of those people ever said, yeah, the Patriots didn't cheat. Nope, never happened. Let's hear what Ty Law had to say on WEEI.
Now, I'm going to call my boy Jerome out on this one. Jerome Bettis, you are full of absolutely full of because, first of all, if it's 4th and 1, by the way, what is your nickname?
The Bus.
The Bus. We know you getting the ball.
Right.
That's just, it's 4th and 1. Big ass running back in the back. Yes, it's swear jar because I'm getting irritated.
Right.
You getting the ball. Don't be mad at us because your line can't block.
And your dummy old line coach is doing this to the same signal.
So if he doing that, if you can see the signal, not saying that we did, but we can see the signal.
Right.
And then if we doing this, how do we know it's a counter? How do we know? So it's no doubt in your mind. And what was the score? 41-17?
I believe that was the final score.
You didn't have a chance in hell before you stepped on the field. You was losing. Plain and simple. You know what I mean? So, Jerome, I promise you I'm going to call him on that one. I got to call him, man. Don't be going on the podcast talking like that, man. You lost, man. You lost, brother.
Okay.
They can say whatever they want. I stand with my captain. I stand with my captain right there, Jerome Bettis. I mean, the reality is this, guys, is you could say whatever you want. Right? I could say that those mountains don't exist, but they're sitting right here in front of me. The reality is it happened. And so we can't rewrite history. And, that's the reason why nobody said anything after the game, really, is because then you look like a sore loser. But the facts are the facts.
Well, and the facts are that the NFL put the hammer down. But to be specific, we don't know exactly how they cheated in that game or on what plays. The NFL has never said that. So we really don't know specifically how the Steelers were cheated. An ESPN piece a couple of years back talked about a play early in the game where Brady split the safeties on a long pass, and he said, those guys said, the people who wrote the story, that they felt that was one where the signals were stolen. And for the record, the score was 41-27, not 41-17.
Yeah.
And
the reason why, and the reason why they couldn't move the ball on us. Well, they struggled the first time we played. And like I said, we were the number one defense in the NFL across the board. One of the best of all time. And the reality is that they came in and we could not stop them. Man, the number one defense in the NFL, we couldn't stop them. There's something changed. Either we were really, really, really bad that day, or there was something else going on.
Ron, I wish Cowher had gone for the touchdown instead of the field goal. I'll tell you that. He had a chance to cut it to a one-touchdown game in the fourth quarter. You remember that? It was 31-17 early in the fourth quarter, and you guys are down there inside the 5, I think. And instead of throwing a ball up to try to get it to a one-score game, he kicked the field goal, took the air out of the place, and then it was all downhill. I'm sorry to relive all this, Hokie.
That's okay. It was a tough loss, man. Remember how emotional that was. We felt like, we were the better team. We felt like we were going to win that game and go on to the Super Bowl. And so, any time that you lose a game, it's never going to be something you're going to get over, because to get to that point and feel like you were the better team and lose, it's a tough deal to live with.
You know what I remember about that day? That's when everybody thought Jerome was going to retire, right? And I remember Hines afterwards, the next day, Hines had tears rolling down his face saying, we wanted to win for Jerome and we let him down.
If I remember, Cookie, I remember that. I believe that game was below zero. Was that the game?
It was cold. They said people had beers that froze in their hands, right?
Yeah, Cookie, it was so cold. I think it was like below minus 10. I think it was 11, 12, something like that. I remember sitting on those heated benches and then going out during the timeout, like a commercial break, standing at the huddle, because we always want to be right there, right? When the whistle blows, we're ready to roll. No wasted time. And by the time I got to that huddle and the whistle blew, I was literally shaking to my core. It was so cold. It was freezing.